Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Today, we're going to touch on all of those subjects with my super special guest, my friend Pam Redman. How you doing, Pam?
I'm awesome. Good to see you, Marcus.
Likewise, likewise. And so, Pam, your title, just to let everybody in on, your title is Director of Patient Experience, correct?
Correct.
And you are at Piedmont Health in the ATL.
I am in the ATL with all the traffic and all the goodness that comes with that. And it is high pollen season, so welcome to spring.
I suppose that's the case. And you're also a nurse. So we're at this time of year that we're recording right now. It's right before Patient Experience Week and Nurses Week and Hospitals Week and all those. So you are a nurse too. So we get to cover a few different angles today about professional and personal stuff. But I guess can we just start at the beginning? Like, did you always know that you wanted to be a nurse? Did you come to this, or what was your journey into this career of healthcare?
So I always have a story about my life. It's been an interesting story. So I'd actually started pre-med in West Virginia at Marshall University and got to organic chemistry and went, oh, no, this is too much. I can't do this. So ended up moving to Kentucky, started in nursing school. Life got in the way a little bit, so I subsequently became an EMT. And so I was a first aid responder for the American Red Cross for several years and did a whole business track in college and was living large and, have a great life and got laid off from my job. And so I'm at this pivot point and I'm 29 and I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do with myself? Because I didn't want to go back into the business world. It just wasn't filling my cup. So I graduated from nursing school at 31 and have been a nurse now over 20 years. So it was the best decision I've ever made. And I've truly appreciated being able to help folks and just be in this realm where I feel like I am making a difference every day and know that I made the right career path. And I've had a plethora of jobs within healthcare, and I have now been at Piedmont, Atlanta, almost 19 years in a variety of roles. And I can say patient experience by far is my favorite role.
Is the best part of it. Awesome, awesome.
Absolutely.
And so I want to point that out to any listeners who may be considering going back to school as a quote unquote non-traditional student, right? You went into it 31 and you said that was into nursing school and you said that was the best decision ever. So if y'all are on the fence, I imagine Pam could give you a little nudge over the fence to make that leap into furthering your education, I assume, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the one thing that maybe folks don't fully appreciate about nursing, or really a lot of the jobs in healthcare, is you're not stuck with the job that you started. There are so many different avenues and so many different ways that you can grow, not only as an individual, but also your role within the healthcare community can change and it ebbs and it flows. And you just have to find that niche that's absolutely the one for you and what's right for you. So highly encourage nursing school, but I will say it is the hardest academic coursework I have ever done. It's just a different way of thinking, a different way of molding your brain to think in a different way, and it was definitely a challenge.
How did being an EMT prior to nursing school prepare you for nursing school and the profession of nursing?
I think especially a lot of young folks who go straight out of high school into nursing, their life experiences are so minimal. So when they're in nursing school and they see blood for the first time, or they have to give a shot for the first time, or they see somebody in distress, that can cause this young person moral distress a lot of times because they're just not prepared for it. So when I think about my days working, as a first aid responder, I got to experience a lot of the real world trauma that's out there. So when I got into nursing school, there was not a lot of the clinical aspects that shocked me or made me second guess my career choice. I was
Yeah, you
already
knew what you were doing.
Yeah, I was already exposed at that point.
Right.
Yes.
So when you're making that transition, like what was difficult about that transition too? Was it or was there anything difficult about going from, because EMT to nursing school to into the profession of nursing, you've got three different aspects there. What was the most difficult aspect of that?
I think I'm a person who likes closure. I like circles. I like to close the loop and see how my patients ended up at the end of the day. You know, what was their trajectory? Were they discharged home? Were they discharged to a facility? Did they recover the way that I had hoped them to? And a lot of times when you're a first aid responder or an EMT or even a paramedic in that field, you don't get to close that loop. You pick the patient up, you get them to their next destination, and that's kind of the end of the story for you and that patient. And so when you're in healthcare, even in a nursing role sometimes, you don't get to close that loop, but you do see when the patient's discharged, kind of what you believe their trajectory is going to be when they get home as part of their recovery. So that's the big difference. You know, you're doing as an EMT, you're stabilizing the patient, you're getting them where they need to be, and then that's the end of your story. You move on to the next patient.
Move on to the next. Yeah, yeah. There's not a lot of time to sometimes process in between those patients. And one of the things I love to get to do is to work with those who are uh, lifesavers out in the field on some of those critical incident stress debriefing types of events, because like you said, you just move on to the next one. And a lot of times with some heavy things like that, that's a lot to carry.
It is a
How did you personally cope with that during the time, and how did you see your coworkers cope with those kind of stresses?
Well, I think a lot of times people view tears as this negative response to a situation or an experience that you have. And I think that is our natural way a lot of times of being able to release those emotions. I'm also somebody who walks a lot. And so when I get home to my dogs, my life completely changes gears. And so then I'm able to get outside and walk and kind of clear my head, for lack of a better, phrase. You get to just kind of purge all that and refocus your energies into two creatures who are just so happy to see you when you get home every day that you kind of forget a lot of that trauma. And then I think you just keep positive and know that you're going to get up the next day and do it again, but it's going to be with a different patient or with a different family or somebody else that needs you in a way that you didn't even think about.
Yeah, in a way that you didn't even think about. And so that brings me to one of the questions that I ask each of my guests, and this is the same question that I pose to my pre-meds at the beginning of every semester. And that is to share a story about a time that you have witnessed compassion in action, that either you have been there for somebody else, or somebody has been there for you. And this all goes back to the story that you heard when I spent a few weeks with you all or a few days with you all at Piedmont last summer, and at Magnet. That's where we first met,
Right.
right?
We
Magnet
sure did.
conference.
We sure did.
Yeah. So sharing that story about Jennifer and being present for other people during their time of suffering. When you think on your life as a nurse and EMT and patient experience, you've got lots. You've made a career out of being there for people while they're suffering. Is there a particular instance that you draw on, or that someone was there for you?
So I reflected on this, and there is definitely one experience, one story that actually happened in 2021. So height of the pandemic, I'm rounding up on the floors because at that point in time, you have to remember visitation here looked very different. There were times we weren't allowing any families to come in because of COVID. And then when we had actually loosened up the visitation policy a little bit, we were able to allow one family member or one care partner to come in and visit with patients as they're here under duress a lot of times. And so I was rounding on the floor one day, and I'm going to call this gentleman Mr. B, even though he and his family know I'm going to share the story today. I happened upon Mr. B walking the halls up in the Marcus Tower, which you were in for our sessions. And just for everybody's viewing knowledge, that was not named after Marcus Engel, as much as I would like to say that it was not. That it
I'll
was
claim
actually
it.
a new tower. Marcus thinks it was, I can tell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a wonderful facility too.
Yes, it's beautiful. So I happened upon Mr. B just walking in the halls one day up on one of our cardiac units. And I'm a talker. I was raised by a dad who taught me to talk to everybody. So I just happened upon him and I said, "Hey, how's your day? Tell me a little bit about you." And so he was here to get evaluated for open heart surgery. And unfortunately, at this time, he had some medical conditions that we had to take care of before he was stable enough for surgery. So he subsequently gets discharged. And we had a great talk prior to discharge. We exchanged numbers. I had given his family my information. And so during his time period at home, he actually wrote me a 2-page letter. He is an astrologer, this gentleman is. So he took my birthday before he left and wrote a 2-page letter about predicting my entire future. So, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this man knows I'm an Aries, I'm a fire child. He really has somehow reached into my soul and knows what I'm about. So before he comes back for his surgery, he had some requests. I want my bed to face a certain way. I have some dietary restrictions. When I wake up from surgery, these are some things that I would appreciate. And so I was able to prepare the organization for this man's stay. Now, granted, I had never met this man before this random encounter in the hallway. So Mr. B comes in for surgery. My team was already aware, and we took such great care of him. We were able to lift our visitation policy during his stay. And so I was able to form just this relationship with his daughter and his son. And so throughout his stay, we're visiting every day. When he was discharged, I would meet them for their follow up appointments in rehab. And because of his experience, his family wanted to give back to Piedmont. And so, again, remember my circles. I like this closure.
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. B's daughter actually joined my patient family advisory council. And so we've been together on this council 2 years now, and she gives her feedback, not only from a patient perspective, but her experience as a family member on opportunities we may have or things that she just thought were out of this world that we do for patients. So that circle and that ability to really have this one-on-one relationship, not only with the patient, with the family, is what resonates in my mind and something that I just wish every patient and family could experience. That's what my dream is.
That's a fantastic story, and what an example of creating a deep and meaningful patient experience for this gentleman. I've never considered that when you talk about dietary restrictions and those kind of things. That I think we all know that those can be a good part of patient experience. But when you're talking about taking the patient's physical room and setting it up, I assume for some type of feng shui
Yes.
type reasoning. Wow, that's super cool, and that's stepping out of one's comfort zones. That's a great example of deeply listening to a patient and then proactively making it happen. That's awesome.
And I wish somehow when we were going through like pre-admission testing for patients who are coming in for surgery, how do we create this holistic approach to patient care and realize that the way that his bed faced, the food that we provided, the tea that he needed, his spiritual books, that was just as important to his healing process as any medicine or any therapy that we could have offered him. Just as important. And
And even by that, maybe the other side of that token is by denying him some of those things, as I think many hospitals might, because that's making the nurses maybe have to walk further into the room, or not have things arranged as they usually do, or whatever number of reasons that people could object to that, or say no, that's too much trouble. We're not gonna do that. I find that such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I'm one of those people that I hate to give gifts or receive gifts. Like Christmas
Mhm.
was always stressful for me, opening presents. So I feel like my gift is being able to make this experience for our patients who you know very well are here under undue stress. This is not the place you plan a vacation to come to, right? How do we make this experience something that isn't so scary, isn't so frightening, and makes them have this comfort level to know that they're in just great hands? And it's not just their health that we're thinking about, it's their mental well being, it's their physical environment. How do we make that approachable for them so that they can heal in just the way that they would if they weren't here? How do they function at home?
That holistic approach that you mentioned is sorely lacking in many scenarios, and I'm so glad that you're taking that approach through your patient experience work, and that the hospital and the healthcare system is so supportive of those measures.
I have a great group of patient experience representatives that work on our floors, work in surgery waiting. So those folks really make that happen for a lot of patients. And I just can't be more pleased with how our hospital allows us to do these things. We don't believe in cookie cutter healthcare. We believe in really this individualized approach to patients because every patient has a different need. Every patient has a different want. Every patient has a different level of family dynamics. There's so many differences that we have to embrace those.
Yeah, you mentioned the family dynamics, and everybody is such an individual. Everybody's such an individual, and I guess maybe that's a time for me to move into some individual questions for you. Is that okay? I got
It's
some
okay.
random questions that I'm so excited to talk to you about. So, like, I usually try to ask people in some way about their taste in art, or music, art, literature, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like you and I could sit here and have conversations about music for hours on
Yes.
end.
Yes.
So what is the best live performance that you have ever been to?
Oh, so you and I talked about this because in your book, you did not ever mention my favorite band and my favorite singer. I don't know if you remember this
I
conversation.
do. I do. Yes.
So I'm going to have to say Stevie Nicks all day long is my
Mhm.
absolute favorite. And so I've seen her probably five, six, seven times. And I saw her
Mhm.
last summer at an outdoor amphitheater here, and it was one of her best performances ever. And for this lady to still be kicking it in her 70s and putting on this type of show is just incredible to me. So music, hands down, would be my favorite. But Stevie Nicks, and it's funny. Fleetwood Mac is on the cover of Life magazine and Rolling Stone this month. And I'm going to give you a trivia
Really?
question back, Marcus.
Uh
How
oh.
many
Okay.
years? How many years have they been out there performing Fleetwood Mac?
At least I'm thinking 50.
50. You
I
got
was going to
it.
say, was Rumors, did that come out in 73
It
or
sure
72?
did. Rumors,
Yeah.
70. Yeah, so 50 years they've been around, if you can believe that.
Wow. Yeah. There's not a whole lot of groups that have that kind of longevity.
Not at all. Not at all.
So I read this book a few years ago. You may enjoy. It's called this. I believe it's called "This Is Your Brain on Music," and it really kind of gets into the neuroscience of music. And I really need to go back and refresh my memory about this. But in it, the author talks about how we we almost get locked into some of our musical tastes from our young life, and then past a certain age, most people do not keep adding to their collection of favorite musical artists, and here's the newest latest band out of LA, that kind of stuff. So knowing that our young lives, or whenever we kind of get our first impression of music, when you're 16 years old, hanging out with your friends, after school, after practice, Friday night, other than Fleetwood Mac, what's on the radio? What's on the stereo when you're hanging out with your friends?
Wow. So it was funny. Sunday, I had a little brunch and had some folks that had come over. And one of the things that when my mom had to be moved into assisted living, I said, all I want is the stereo and the albums. That's all that I want. And so it's funny, I have Michael Jackson and Thriller, and I have all of these just albums that you can't find anymore. Elvis. So when I think about what is on my radio now, Marcus, I'm going to share that I don't deviate too much from what I know. And I like some of the new music, but I don't appreciate that they don't have staying power. I want to be a fan of a band that's going to be around for 50 years, not a one hit wonder that I play over and over and over. And so when I think about bands today, I think about Maroon 5 has been around for a long, long time, Matchbox 20. So I think we've got some bands who have staying power,
Mm.
but I love a wide genre of music. I don't really say that I don't listen to this kind or this kind. So I'm kind of all over the board. Can I sing all of their songs? No, but I can appreciate the beat and the rhythm and the lyrics, if that makes sense.
And you just named off two of the Hotness's favorite bands right there too. So
Yeah. See,
we
this
could
is
all
why we're
hang out,
supposed to be friends, Marcus. I'm
right?
telling you, we're connected. Yeah,
It was in the stars, as Mr. B would have said.
exactly. You got it.
So you mentioned hiking with your dogs, and I know that you do like solo van travel across the country and do hiking trips. Where's the best place you have ever hiked?
My favorite place in the whole wide world is going to be in California, the Redwoods.
Hmm.
It is something you can't even describe. The trees are, so I'm a tree person, hands down. I was out last night, talking to the trees, and the trees in the redwoods and just the Oregon coast is, I hope to live there one day. I just fell in love with it. It is something amazing, and I just hope that folks that are listening or watching today really appreciate all that the states have to offer. I think sometimes we think we have to go so far out of this country to see something fabulous, but when you see all of the different terrains and all of the different climates that are just within our country, you could go to a different state every day and appreciate a whole different environment. But the redwoods, Oregon, Northern California, hands down my all-time favorite.
Nice, nice, nice. And so with the last question that I have for you today is, if you had the world's largest billboard on the world's tallest mountain, what is the message that you would like to broadcast to humanity?
Wow, Marcus, that's a deep question. I think what I would say is not every day is going to be a great day, but how you choose to approach your day is completely within your power. And how you choose to build your own emotional muscle and react to life circumstances or what life throws at you every day is also within your control. And the more that you give that control up to other people or circumstances within your environment that you have no control over, you actually lose some of your power to be able to do that. So stay true to yourself and know you're going to have tough times, and it's okay to cry and it's okay to be mad and frustrated. But every day you wake up, you've got a new chance for a new day. And so just embrace that. And if you can go with the ebbs and flows in life, you're golden. That's what I would say.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you just said there. Every day is a new chance, right?
Yes.
Every day is a new chance. And uh, one of my favorite books of all time is Illusions by Richard Bach. And who's the guy who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull and kind of started the whole human potential movement. And he's like, one of the lines from Illusions is how to tell if your mission on life is over. If you're alive, it's not.
Right.
Every day is a new chance. Every day is a new chance.
Yes. And I guess the
That's
one
awesome.
thing I would also say too is I think sometimes we're not as forgiving of ourselves as we should be. And I think we have to just realize we're humans working in an imperfect world, and therefore we're never going to be perfect. So you got to be forgiving of yourself.
Yeah, hard to do a lot of times for people. And I think maybe even potentially harder to do for those who are drawn to caregiving professions too. Is, our heart goes out. We never want to hurt anybody. And yet we are flawed human beings. We're going to mess up. And what we do in the wake of that messing up is really where we have our power, as you said.
Right. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, Pam Redman, thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for welcoming me into the Piedmont family last year, and just thank you for your insight and for your work and your commitment to helping make patient experiences for people like me those positive and healing, supportive environment as we can have.
Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it. And I would just say happy Patient Experience Week. And I would just want to give a shout out when I started thinking about Mr. B and all of the disciplines within healthcare who touched him in order for him to have a great experience. I stopped at about 30 different individual departments or individuals that helped him have that experience. So when we think about the holistic approach to how we manage our patients, I also think about the holistic approach that we have to provide. I'm not an expert in patient access. I'm not an expert in billing. I'm not an expert in how an MRI works. But all of these teams working together is really what that experience is about.
Teams, right? And
Team.
it takes great teams to make great experiences like Mr. B had. It can be done by an individual in a very micro way, but whenever we take that to the next step and push it out bigger and bigger, that becomes a macro involvement. And I'm just so happy that you and your facility are so supportive of patients' needs like that.
Fantastic. Marcus, it's been my pleasure. I hope we get to see
Yeah,
each other again soon and that I
absolutely.
get to meet James.
Yeah, we'll go for a hike.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pam. And listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm Marcus Engel, your host, and this is the podcast where I teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. If you have been one of those wonderful people who is sharing and subscribing and rating and reviewing the podcast, thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you. Thank you for helping us continue to spread the word about compassion and courage. We will see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.